It's great to be here. I'm going to make this very quick, and this will be a Cliff Notes version of this slideshow, but it's a great pleasure to be here and to be here with John Faraci and our partners at International Paper. The whole conversation tonight is about forests, and most campaigns about forests focus on the animals that live there, and there's some stunning ones that live there. It's 80% of the world's biodiversity is found in forests, mostly tropical forests, but temperate ones count too. But the more consequential thing to a lot of people is the fact that 1.5 billion people depend on forests for their living. And through another lens, forests are the second biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions. And the truth is that we're losing 32 million acres of forests every year, this is a scene from Sumatra. And if you look at the causes of deforestation, you may think that they are primarily the pulp and paper industry. But the number one cause is agriculture writ large. It is big productions like this. This is a soy plantation in the Amazon. Look at these guys are moving through, and at the same time that they are moving through and harvesting, they've got another row of machines coming through to plant the next row of crops. Next slide. The second biggest with soy is beef. The third is palm oil. And then after that is really more generally forest products. But when you think about forest products are most of the greatest impact of forest products, next slide please, is illegal. It is illegal forestry that has the disproportionate impact in the world. And it is actors that many of you know of in other parts of the world. But when we look at the world and we think about how do you solve the problem of deforestation, you can either go to 7 billion consumers or go to 1.5 billion producers, or work with those few companies that control the supply chain in the middle. And in our work, we're always looking for leverage. And it is those companies that hold the secret to the solution. Next slide, please. So we have gone through all the many commodities, from beef to palm oil to cotton, sugar, soy, and all the rest, identified those companies that trade the most, and we've developed MOUs with those. These are the ones in green or yellow, at various stages of MOUs, with 56 of the 100 biggest companies that trade these commodities. And those are the ones who send the signals to say, we want these products to be grown sustainably, and we need support from Congress and from other governments to support the signals that we're sending. Next slide, please. In the forest products industry, these are what the logos look like. These are the players that are part of our global forest and trade network. The biggest by far is International Paper. And while we need Congress to enforce the laws when they come to illegal products, whether that's ivory or whether that's tiger parts or whether that's timber or whether that's fish, to support the companies in the United States that are doing the right thing, we also need to support the effort of industry to come together to send the right signals, to bring their purchasing power to solve these problems. Next slide, please. This is, I had the chance to go to Borneo a few years ago, and I flew in over the palm oil plantations, which are moving in from it's like a bullseye, Borneo. The boundaries of Borneo, which is one of the richest forests on earth, are all palm oil. They're moving in. There are a few parks in the middle, but the rest of it is all managed forests. This is what has happened to Borneo over the past 50 years. And when you talk about what happens to Borneo and the elephants and the pygmy elephants and the orangs and all the creatures that live there and the people who live there, the solution, parks is part of the solution, but the real solution lies in managed forests. Because when you look at biodiversity in Borneo, there is almost as much in managed forests as there are in the parks. Parks are incredibly important. But unless we find a way to sustainably manage forests, the only nature we're going to have is going to be like a museum. You're going to pay a ticket, you're going to go visit what the world used to look like, and the rest of it is going to be industrialized. Next slide, please. So from our point of view at WWF, we will not succeed in our work unless we work with companies like International Paper. And we will not succeed in saving biodiversity in forests around the world unless we support sustainable forestry. Or put another way, one of the best ways to save forests is to cut trees, but to do so in the right way, which is why the work that we have with International Paper and these companies is so incredibly important.
Ever notice how the world has become smaller? People on other continents have become neighbors. Friends speak different languages. And things that are important weave people and places together. That's why we do things a little differently at International Paper, not just in what we make, but how we do it. Our products make a great deal of difference in the lives they touch. From the local town to the global economy. It is a noble task. A purpose of substance, more important than mere commerce. It is why every minute of every day, all over the globe, someone at International Paper is making what matters.
Say hello to the former First Lady of Idaho, my wife, Vicki. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm honored that you asked me to come and say a few words and introduce John. Most of you, I know what crowd I'm in, but most of you don't know this. I'm the most conservative member of the United States Senate, at least according to the National Journal. It may surprise you to hear that having said that, my undergraduate degree was in forestry. And I love to hunt and fish, and I spend a lot of time out back, and I have a green streak down my back that's pretty wide, and I like spending time outside. Vicki and I are cattle ranchers, and I've been fortunate in my life to see what's happened, how the world has changed over the last 70 years. And I can tell you, when I was in forestry school, there wasn't the emphasis on the sustainability that there is today. And indeed, we watched as they tried to clean up messes from logging and forestry operations that were done by people who weren't bad people. They were just people that didn't know how to do it and didn't understand that there was a right way and a wrong way to do this, and that the land was going to be around for a long time. I can also tell you that I'm a huge believer in the collaborative method of doing things, and of course that's exactly what's going on here, and that was what both of these shows presented. Idaho was the first state in the country to have a roadless rule that was written by Idahoans and put together by us in Idaho, and I did that when I was governor. Indeed, when I became governor, the Bush administration just asked the governors if they would like to participate in this, because As we all know, this has been going on for about 40 years. Nobody knows how many lawsuits that there have been, and the federal government had not been successful in doing this. And so a lot of people said that it couldn't be done, and Idaho had the largest block of roadless in America, 9.2 million acres, and arguably, and I think definitively, the most diverse. And so it was a real challenge to do it. But the only way it could be done is if we got everybody together at the table. And I started with my friends, which were mostly industry people. They were anxious to come to the table. And then I turned to my friends in the environmental community in Idaho. And it was a little more difficult to get them to the table. But we did get them to the table. And at the end of the day, we wrote a plan that was well accepted by everyone. I have the highest admiration for our flagship conservation group in Idaho, which is the Idaho Conservation League, but also for Trout Unlimited. Chris Wood, who's the head now of Trout Unlimited, played a tremendous role in that. We got it through there. We went to the Forest Service, and it was accepted by the Forest Service and published by the Forest Service and became a rule. We were promptly sued by two of the environmental groups that I couldn't get to the table. They respectfully declined to come to the table, and their argument was, these things need to be done in Washington, D.C., not in the state. And I said, guys, I know you don't trust us, but listen to what we have to say. They wouldn't do it. And as a result of that, they sued us in district court. We won. They sued us in the Ninth Circuit Court, the most liberal, the greenest court in America, and we got a unanimous opinion out of the Ninth Circuit Court. And so now the roadless rule in Idaho is indeed the law of the land, and probably will be there for a long time until someday probably Congress will step in and pick off pieces of it and make more wilderness. We have the largest block of wilderness already in Idaho, in the lower 48. And in the roadless rule, we had over 3 million acres that got, I didn't use the word wilderness because it had political connotations that are difficult, but they're wildland recreation, and their protection is slightly better than what a wilderness area would be. We have another chunk that got substantial wilderness protection. But in any event, the bottom line is here, this stuff can be done. Even difficult things like putting together a roadless plan like that engaged all of the different communities, the motorized recreationists, the hiking recreationists, the hunters, the fishermen, industry people, that they can all come together if everybody will come with good spirit and give and take, so you give everybody the ability to walk away with a win. And we did that in Idaho, and so I'm proud to be here supporting this, and I have every confidence in listening to what's happening, that as the environmental community continues to mature, as the industrial community continues to mature on environmental matters, I think that these kind of efforts will continue to get better and better. So with that, it's my great honor to introduce John Faraci. John attended Denison University, and from 1995 to 1999, he was the CEO and managing director of Carter Holt Harvey Limited, a former majority-owned subsidiary of International Paper. In 1999, he became senior vice president of finance and CFO of International Paper. In 2003, he became chairman and CEO. He has a biography that goes on from that everyone would be envious of, to be able to sit on these kind of boards and directorships and be able to do the kinds of things that he does. He sits on the board of directors of United Technologies Corporation and Citigroup International Advisory Board. He's chairman of the Brazil-U.S. Business Council and is U.S. section chair of the U.S.-Brazil CEO Forum. He serves as a board member of the National Fish and Wildlife Federation, the Grand Teton National Park Foundation, and the National Park Foundation, just to name a few. John and International Paper are helping pioneer the responsible forest initiatives from India to Latin America. He knows better than most the conservation and proper management of natural resources is the lifeblood of America's economy and is good business internationally. He believes, as all of us do in this room, that we are Americans. We know how to balance. We know how to do this, and we can get it done. John, thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, Senator. I thought tonight was just an example of the new normal in Washington. I didn't think it was an abnormal night. It's just kind of what you all do every day, right?
More or less.
I also like the analogy of the forest as the lungs of the earth. I think that's great. So thanks for coming out tonight. I know you've all been very busy. It was it's good to be here in the company of someone like Carter Roberts from WWF and listen to some of the great work they're doing of highlighting some very important issues around the world. If I get some help with the slides, just quickly, what International Paper is all about. We're a global forest products company. We make paper products that also include absorbent products for baby diapers. We're in the packaging business, both we call the industrial packaging business, think corrugated boxes when you move furniture or move goods, and think consumer packaging. If you think McDonald's and Starbucks, we make the cups and make the stuff that you use when you go to or get your food at McDonald's. And we have a distribution business which sells those products to our business-to-business customers. We're headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee, 70,000 employees, about $30 billion in sales. This next slide just gives you a snapshot of what we look like, and we are a global company, but North America is by far, the biggest part of International Paper. But we're probably the only forest products company in the world, if you look at the Europeans, the Latin American competitors, that has a footprint in all these emerging markets, really, call them the BRIC countries. So let me just kind of share with you how we think about forestry. I'll come back to North America because that's what you're interested in. But as the senator said, we think we have a role to play, a leadership role and responsibility to advocate for responsible forestry everywhere we operate. In India, where we've been for about 2 years now, I think we celebrate our second birthday in October. We're taking our board of directors there on Friday. The company we bought started a farm forestry program. We have 40,000 farmers that we give seedlings to. They grow trees on land that they have. They might only have an acre or two where they're growing sugarcane and corn. Some of that land won't grow sugarcane or corn. It will grow trees. And that's our source of fiber for our business in India. And we're doing the right thing. We're helping farmers generate more income and also plant trees in India. In Brazil, where we own land, we don't own land in India, the really good news is people in Brazil buy into the fact that plantation forestry takes pressure off the natural forests. And so all of our forests in Brazil are all plantation, renewable eucalyptus plantations, and we don't harvest any of our fiber from the native forests in Brazil. In Russia, which is where a third of the world's softwood resides, we operate the biggest tract of FFC certified fiber in the world, almost 10 million acres. And if you go to Siberia and you kind of appreciate, I've been there a number of times, that the trees take 100 years to grow. You need a lot of land if you're going to operate facilities there. But again, that is sustainable forestry. We're growing more trees than we're harvesting, even in a place like Siberia. So let me just share with you what we do in the U.S. and maybe go to the next slide here. Fiber is kind of essential to running our business. That's where we start. And just to give you a perspective of what International Paper does, every day 7,000 trucks of wood arrive at an International Paper facility somewhere in North America. There are 27 facilities. 7,000 trucks. That's equivalent to a working forest when you look at how long it takes to grow trees in the south, where most of our operations are, of 70 million acres of working forest. That's the forest it takes to support International Paper. If that was a state, I think that would be the 8th largest state in the country. So obviously we have a huge footprint when it comes to the forestry issue, and we like being right in the middle of that issue. We think as a global leader, we have a responsibility, an obligation, and a leadership role to play. And I think our view on that has changed over the last couple decades. If you go back a number of years ago, I think International Paper and many in our industry kind of viewed their role as stay low, don't be visible, don't talk about what we're doing because all we get is criticized. And if you think about sustainability these days, think about forests and the other things we use to make our products like water and energy, there's no escaping the fact we need to be right at the center of the sustainability discussion and a leader with not just what we say, but what we do. So let me talk about some of the things that we do. And I'll step back and say 6 years ago, International Paper was the largest private landowner in the United States. We owned about 7 million acres of land. We came to the conclusion that it wasn't the right thing for the company to continue to own that land. And so in a very short period of time, actually in a week, we sold 7 million acres. But we took our conservation and protection responsibility very seriously. And this has been going back for about 20 years. And as part of that sale, protected a lot of the lands that were owned by International Paper. We went to 11 states, asked the governors to pick out the special parcels, and then worked with various agencies, many NGOs, to make sure that land got into conservation, which it did. But just to give you a sense of going back over 20 years, what International Paper's done, we've protected about 1.5 million acres through donations, easements, and sales, 200 sites, 450 miles of southern rivers, 3 battlefields, 1 from the Revolutionary War and 2 from the Civil War, 250,000 acres of land in the Adirondack State Park, and the congressman knows very well that part of the world, 60,000 acres along the Appalachian Trail, 49,000 acres in a place called the Great Dismal Swamp, which is a very special area, and 22,000 acres in the Okefenokee Swamp, which is also a very unique and special place. So we take that responsibility, very seriously, and we have a discussion with a lot of stakeholders about, well, what are the state of the forests in the United States? How are they doing? Well, just a couple facts here. Today, the U.S. has 20% more forest land than it had on Earth Day in 1970. Part of the reason, not the only reason, part of the reason for that this is the case is the private sector plants, on average, 2.5 million trees every single day. And, when I tell people that, they always say, that can't be possible. That's absolutely not right. Well, we've gone back and looked at that pretty closely, and if you look at the number of seedlings that are grown in nurseries, and most of those seedlings get sold to people like the people we buy our fiber from. If those seedlings are getting grown, they're getting planted somewhere, and that's 2.5 million seedlings every single day. That's why we have more forest land in the United States now than we had 20 years ago. 70% of the U.S. forests are working forests. In the U.S., private working forests provide about 2.5 million jobs, almost $90 billion in payroll, $5 billion in state income taxes, and about $100 billion to the GDP. We have a huge spin-off impact. The 70,000 employees we have, and roughly 40,000 of those would be in the U.S., have a huge impact in terms of the number of spin-off jobs that we create. And more than half, close to 55% of the forest in the U.S. is privately owned. And when you think about the West, and Senator knows this, in Idaho, most of the land is probably federally owned, but when you go to other parts of the country, certainly in the Southeast, most of that forest is privately owned. So the working forest is really a public-private partnership between where the government owns the land and where the land is owned by private landowners. So what are some of the things that we're doing? Go back to that, and I'm taking Carter's advice here and being very brief with my remarks. Some of the things we're doing right now today to try to work with credible groups that can help us leverage International Paper's capability. One of them is the National Fish and Wildlife Federation that has really done a great job over a number of years of really leveraging their capabilities to get people like International Paper working with other private partners to restore habitat, make working forests viable, extend them, protect wildlife, and improve water quality. We're working to restore, conserve, and connect about 200,000 acres of land in 3 areas. And if you go to the next slide, it shows where those properties are. One of them is what we call low country, North Carolina and South Carolina. The other is the Cumberland Plateau, northern Alabama, western Georgia, and eastern Tennessee. And the third is what we call the Big Piney area of East Texas and Louisiana. International Paper today, I think we made our first grant last week. I'm going to be in South Carolina in November, in some town over on the coast, making another grant. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's very smart. Look it up on the map. But it's probably about an hour south of Georgetown, between Georgetown and Charleston. We think that the $7.5 million International Paper is putting into this program with the National Fish and Wildlife Federation over the next 3 years is actually going to generate $30 million of on-the-ground money that's going to make that 200,000 acres of restoration of working forest a very real reality and a good thing in all three of these areas. So I guess I would just sum up by saying I'm pleased to be here. I love to come to Washington to talk about conservation and what International Paper is doing. I don't love to come to Washington for a lot of other things that I need to do, but I appreciate you all coming out tonight. I know everybody's got a lot to do, but I think this is a very important issue for both the U.S. and for the world, because we are interconnected, and it's great to see WWF looking at things all around the world. We want to be part of that, but our major efforts are right here in the United States. So, thank you.
Hello. Thank you. Mine is an observation. Looking at the map that was shown, Africa is conspicuously missing from your areas of operation. Are there any plans to invest on the African continent, bearing in mind that Africa has a huge forest estate?
Well, the question is about investing in Africa. We used to be the second largest employer in South Africa, where there is plantation forestry along the eastern coast from Cape Town up to Durban. We sold that business about 10 years ago, and plantation forestry really hasn't taken off yet in the other African countries. I think it could happen in a place like Mozambique. The soils, the climate, the water is conducive to that. But as you know, Africa is a challenging place. I think it's got a bright future, but that future is probably down the road from the perspective of our industry.
I'll ask you a question with just one word: China. Do you have any chance to meet if you have such people, your counterparts in China? As we read so many horror stories about illegal logging by the Chinese, I don't know if they have a counterpart company to yours. They seem to have these massive state-owned enterprises. I just wondered if you've been to Beijing or Shanghai and met your sort of Chinese equivalent, and is he or she as environmentally minded as you are? And if not, what could you do about it?
Well, we actually have 8,000 employees in China. So and our counterpart in China, in one of our biggest businesses, is our partner. So we've obviously need him a lot, because he happens to be the third largest paper company in China, a company called Sun Paper. The good news from an International Paper standpoint is most of our operations in Russia are supplying China. China's got a huge fiber deficit. I think the three largest commodities China imports are iron ore, four largest: iron ore, soybeans, oil, and wood fiber. So I think we're doing the right thing for China, because the fact that we're responsibly and sustainably managing forests in Siberia, making product that they need and shipping to China takes pressure off the illegal logging. China's a tough place to do business. So is Russia, but they're complicated in different ways. And I think the Chinese government is finally waking up to the fact that they need to get serious about their environmental footprint. And we see that with our partner coming to us and asking for advice from us on how they can do things that we've done here for 30 years.
Yeah, I'd love to just talk about China for a second, because it's quite complicated. When China declared a logging ban in their country, when they suffered through lots of landslides and lots of social unrest in Western China, that seemed like a good idea at the time. But when you look at the map of Borneo, all they did was essentially export that problem to other parts of the world. If you want to get a handle on soy production in Brazil, the greatest increase of soy production in Brazil is now being exported to China to use for pork production in China to meet the new demands of the new growing middle class in China. So if we want to conserve the Amazon, you've got to do something about the way China imports soy and the conditions that they place on that. But even the amount of timber or other products that China consumes from the rest of the world, they often repackage it and sell it to the United States. And so the more that we can create transparency in the way that we source products through China and really look all the way through to the end of the supply chain, then the more that we can help China achieve a lot of the principles that are in their new 5-year plan, which includes a much healthier dose of harmony with the world and sustainability than there ever has been. But I think they're going to need help and a little encouragement. We're working with MacArthur and Hank Paulson and lots of others and looking at how do we support at least the plans in the 5-year plan and helping China and these source countries get a handle on this issue. It's complicated, but you can't avoid China.